Lord be with you.
Also with you.
Let us pray. Beloved, you have given us the everyday mystics to help us learn how to be with God in a very personal way, to listen for God's word to us, and to have a conversation and a relationship. Well, thank you for that, and thank you especially for the mystic John O'Donohue and for Dicy Adams, who loves him and is willing to share with us her love of him. In Christ's name. Amen.
Passing those around, will you somebody's?
Thank you. So, hey, this is Dicy.
Hello. Yeah, so I've been coming to St. Paul since like September, but then I just threw myself all in joining choir and deciding to do this presentation. I woke up yesterday without a voice and almost texted you often because the song we sang today is at the very top of my register. So now my voice is even more down, but I'm going to try to talk really loud and yeah. So John O'Donohue is, if you want to show the picture of him. Okay. We're mostly going to be talking about his book on Kara, but I'll just tell you really briefly who he is.
Oh, great. I have to go get it. Dicy, yeah, so
Oh, it's okay.
I put the,
But he was born in Connacht in Ireland. He was a philosopher, a priest, and a mystic. That's why we're talking about him. He only lived 52 years. He was born in 56 and died in 08. So this version of the book that I have is also on Audible. So you'll see on your handouts that I tell you where these, the selections that we're reading, like where they are in Audible. If you want to download that or get it from the library, you can find where they are.
and for you on Zoom, I put the link to the handout in the chat, so you can get it there.
Yeah. But this book is narrated by his son on the 25th anniversary, and he has a great accent. Yeah, if you can go to the next slide to show this picture. That's John. But have any of y'all heard of him? Yeah. This book is so famous. I just picked it up because I liked it. Was in Irish and I speak Irish badly, so I was like, "Ooh, what is this book?" Not knowing that it's like super famous. Can we go to the next slide? At my heart, I am a teacher, so I'm gonna be a little pedantic for a minute and tell you what on-fire means. You'll see it written a few different ways. You'll see it with the dot over the C, which is called a shevu, or you'll see it as like a compound word with a hyphen. Sometimes you'll see it with an H instead of the C dot. And the word, when you put a word together in Irish, a compound word, you add that shevu, that dot. But in the 60s, they took away the dot and made it into an H instead. So that's why you'll sometimes see it spelled A-N-A-N-C-H-A-I-A, or you'll see it with the C dot. It's just called a shevu. It shows up grammatically all the time in Irish. It's super fun. That's like how you make the past tense. It's how you show possession. What we're going to be doing today is doing Lectio Divina. If you want to go to the next slide, on Cara. It means soul friend. I think I totally forgot to say that. Cara is friend in Irish, and Anand is soul. So we're going to be doing some Lectio Divina, and if y'all haven't heard of that, it means divine reading in Latin. And it was first came up with in the 3rd century by the desert fathers and mothers. I'm not sure who they are, but I know that then it was solidified as a practice by the Saint Benedict monks in the 6th century. I didn't know that about the desert father and mothers. I just thought it was the Saint Benedict monks. So, yeah, I guess I kind of just put these slides together so you have something to look at. Don't really need them. But let's backtrack and look at what the Anamkara is, and we can, does somebody want to read this little passage? I'm happy to do it.
I'm happy to do it. The Amakara is God's gift. Friendship is the nature of God. The Christian concept of God as Trinity is the most sublime articulation of otherness and intimacy, an internal inner flow of friendship. This perspective discloses the beautiful fulfillment of our immortal longing in the words of Jesus, who said, "Behold, I call you friends." Jesus, as the Son of God, is the first other in the universe. He is the premise of all difference. He is the secret Amakara of every individual. In friendship with him, we enter the tender beauty and affection of the Trinity. In the embrace of this internal friendship, we get to be free.
Yeah, so this book is very poetic. I started highlighting it and then gave up. You would just highlight pretty much the whole thing is written just so beautifully. And his main thesis at the beginning, he's talking about how we all have an ankara, like you don't necessarily have to be married to that person. And in sort of the Catholic tradition, a priest that you confess to could be your ankara, but it's somebody that sees you for who you really truly are and doesn't judge you. And so his thesis is that Jesus is the first ankara for all of us, which I choose. So that's what the ankara is. And we're going to do some Lectio Divina. The nursery closes at noon, so if I sprint out, y'all will have to finish. Without me.
Hey, Lori, we don't have the link to the handout.
The link to
It should be in the chat
it's
there.
in.
If you scroll down to the bottom of the chat, no?
It doesn't look like it was sent.
Oh, it wasn't sent. I'm sorry, you guys.
Are there any more paper copies?
Yeah,
Somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
thanks Raven for pointing that out. We could have done it all hour.
So the way Lectio Divina works is you read through the passage 3 times, and you're going to read it slowly with intention. And the first time around, you're going to just think of a word or a phrase that really stands out to you. And just in the interest of time, after we're finished reading it the first time, we're just going to shout out, just popcorn, tell me your word or phrase, and try your best to not explain why, just because we're going to get to that. So we'll just kind of popcorn out again, and now you've kind of got in mind what other people were thinking about. Like, you still want to read it for your own self, what you're getting out of it, and find another word or phrase. It doesn't have to be different, but it can be. And then we'll share those words or phrases again if you want to. And then the last time around, we'll read it slowly one more time, and then we'll actually discuss it. And that can take however we want to. If we don't do both passages, that's fine. If I find it running to the nursery, y'all can stay and do the second passage. But
We are done at 11:30, are we not?
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
She's looking at noon, she has a date.
Yeah, I understand that. I just want to clarify that I'm not going to be here.
Okay. None of us will be, sweet. So because I had the liberty of picking both passages, I picked one about life and another one about death. This book came to me. This book came to me when I had just given birth and then my grandpa died when I was 5 weeks postpartum. And I read this book during all of that. So I don't remember much other than I do remember, because this was a few years ago. I remember these 2 passages really well. So if you were to ask me what I thought this book was about, I would say life and death. But other people might see it. Yeah, so I'm wondering if we should read it to ourselves, or if the first time around, if somebody wants to read. They're kind of.
I'll read it if
You want to read the first one?
Sure. It's just yeah, okay. To be born is to be chosen. For millions of years before you arrived here, the dream of your individuality was carefully prepared. You were sent to a shape of destiny in which you would be able to express the special gift you bring to the world. Sometimes this gift may involve suffering and pain that can neither be accounted for nor explained. There is a unique destiny for each person. Each one of us has something to do here that can be done by no one else. If someone else could fulfill your destiny, then they would be in your place and you would not be here. It is in the depths of your life that you will discover the invisible necessity for this. Your gift and giftedness come alive. Your heart quickens and the urgency of living rekindles your creativity.
Authenticity.
Destiny.
Giftedness.
Special.
Learning.
Carefully prepared.
Individuality.
Invisible necessity.
Depths of your life.
Heart quickens.
Urgency of living.
Decipher.
Creativity.
Rekindles.
Invisible necessity.
Unique.
So you see what I'm saying, that you could highlight every single word in this book. So maybe we'll read it again to ourselves. What do y'all think?
Somebody else.
There's somebody else? Yeah. There? Oh, sure.
For millions of years before you arrived here, the dream of your individuality was carefully prepared. You were sent to a shape of destiny in which you would be able to express the special gift you bring to the world. Sometimes this gift may involve suffering and pain that can neither be accounted for nor explained. There is a unique destiny for each person. Each one of us has something to do here that can be done by no one else. If someone else could fulfill your destiny, then you would be in your place. They would be in your place, and you would not be here. It is in the depths of your life that you will discover the invisible necessity that brought you here. When you begin to decipher this, your gift and giftedness will come alive. Your heart quickens, and the urgency of living rekindles your creativity.
Invisible necessity.
Before you arrived, individuality prepared.
Can be done by no one else.
This gift may involve suffering and pain.
Shape of destiny.
Urgency of living.
Destiny in which you would be able to express.
Okay, we'll read one more time and then we'll open the floor. Which is, who wants to read? Lily, that's something to-
For millions of years before you arrived here, the dream of your individuality was carefully prepared. You were sent to a shape of destiny in which you would be able to express the special gift you bring to the world. Sometimes this gift may involve suffering and pain that can neither be accounted for nor explained. There is a unique destiny for each person. Each one of us has something to do here that can be done by no one else. If someone else could fulfill your destiny, they would be in your place and you would not be here. It is in the depths of your life that you will discover the invisible necessity that has brought you here. When you begin to decipher this, your gift and giftedness come alive. Your heart quickens and the urgency of living rekindles your creativity.
Thoughts, feelings, process.
I'm thinking that many people never come in their destiny. They miss out on so much.
And sometimes it takes a long time to discover that.
I'm wondering if my destiny is a feeling or an act.
Writing that down.
Yeah.
Seems like sometimes we think that destiny is some far out reaching thing, that it's like a goal. When you need to understand that your destiny is just to be you, and that's enough. It's kind of the first thing. I mean, it was already just, and all you have to do is be you. There's no like, just be authentic. You don't have to fake it. Put on masks. You just be you.
I agree, but in my experience, it takes a while to actually be you, you know? To not try and make it, to not try and fake things, and to be who, for me, who I am.
He talks about the, just in the commandment, when Jesus says to love others as yourself, that the anamkara is also having yourself as your own soul friend, that we have to be friends within our own beings. So when we can embrace that, then we can appreciate and love our destiny and fulfill our destiny.
Mm.
But the journey to discover our destiny is also terribly important. What you discover and what you learn on the journey. That's helpful for the ultimate.
And some people, it takes a very long time. I spent 2/3 of my lifetime, at least, before I realized that I was a person. You know, that I was not some object that was a tool for other people to use. That I was a person in my own right.
Last time we read it, this whole section reminded me of Psalm 139.
Yeah.
Yeah, you created my inmost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb. That's before you arrived. It's, and it goes on to say, how precious to me are your thoughts, God, how vast is some of them. It just, the other thing that is sticking out to me, and it kind of goes with the sermon today. Sometimes this gift may involve suffering and pain that can never be accounted for nor explained. And I think as we move towards love is difficult. I think in every relationship, in every sense of the word.
So for me, the suffering and pain that I have experienced has allowed me to reach out and touch and meet people on a level that I would never have been able to before. So that's a gift. It's allowed me to connect with and communicate with people on a bus. Lori used to always talk to me about my bus stories, which I don't have very many anymore because my friends are afraid of what will happen to me falling or getting ill on the bus, so I don't ride the bus anymore. I made so many very interesting and meaningful connections with people on the bus, listening to their stories.
Yeah, I think I view this from two different lights. As a teacher who teaches high schoolers, one of the big questions high schoolers is like, why? What is my purpose in life? I don't know what I need to do. I don't know why I'm here. And one prayer that I say for my students every morning, just personally, is that they are instilled with the wisdom to make decisions and fulfill who they are and who they want to be. And it is a lot of suffering and pain. A lot of them deal with, I'm meant to be here. What is my purpose? And not all of them have come to Christ and whatnot, and all of them are Christian, but I do wish that for them they are given in some form wisdom to figure out what their destiny is. Because this passage answers the big question of why. A lot of people ask, like, why am I here? What am I doing? I know that in college I faced that, like, I don't need to do this, and people used to make fun of me because I have a new career every day. Do this, do that, do this. And it is a kind of turmoil within of figuring out who you are. And as I started to just kind of open up and like, I am a musician, I am a creative spirit. So I found my position here and doing this one, and there is a sense of fulfillment and like, okay, this is a sense of peace. So this is where I'm meant to be for now. And I think oftentimes people think it's a one-time deal, but I think depending on your phase of life, there's a different destiny for you at that time. It's not just a one glove fits all, but it's a road, and I've kind of learned to embrace that. Do that.
It's like the journey is the destiny. Now that I'm gonna get somewhere, and I did it. I figured out who I am. It's like the journey is the point of living.
Thinking about the idea of deciphering and how it relates to opportunity and figuring out your destiny is kind of like figuring out what are your opportunities and also what opportunities you have to say no to for the other opportunities.
I'll riff on that. The one Latin word I know the base of is decipher, which comes from suicide. It's a decision. So it's a separation. So the way I read this is for those of us who are lucky enough to get to like midlife, we kind of have to go back. We have enough meat on our bone. We have experience. Our egos have made us, and we have to start to decide what's necessary. So when it comes alive, it's kind of like, for me, it's more an inward journey of what to choose and what to separating the seed from the chaff, I guess.
I kind of feel that between Lori said about, for me, there's so much marketing and cultural pressure and how you're raised to figure out who you are and who you aren't. So there was all of that, covered 60 years. And then what you said about just being yourself, there's a whole lot of, you finally get to where I'm just going to be myself. And you think, and you maybe insecurity, you go, I hope they can take it. But it takes faith. It takes some inner place I can go to check back in and go, I really want to be myself. Because it's not a particularly safe endeavor. It's vulnerable. So this makes me think.
Yeah. I think that's a good note to end on. I like that. And just in interest of time, the second passage is a lot longer. So let's go with that one. Does anybody ready?
I can read it.
Thank you.
Imagine if you could talk to a baby in the womb and explain its unity with the mother, how this cord of belonging gives it life. You could then tell the baby that this was about to end. It was going to be expelled from the womb, pushed through a very narrow passage, finally to be dropped out into a vacant, open life. The cord that held it to this mother womb was going to be cut, and it was going to be on its own forevermore. If the baby could talk back, it would fear that it was going to die. For the baby within the womb being born would seem like death. Our difficulty with these great questions is that we are only able to see them from one side. In other words, we can only see death from one side. Many have had the experience, but nobody has come back to tell us about it. Those who have died stay away, they do not return. Therefore, we cannot actually see the other half of the circle that death opens. Wittgenstein summed it up very nicely when he said, "Death is not an experience in one's life. It cannot be an experience because it is the end of the life in which and through which all experiences came to you." I like to imagine that death is about rebirth. The soul is now free in a new world where there is no more separation or shadow or tears. A friend of mine lost a son who was 26 years of age. I was at the funeral. Her other children were all there as the coffin was lowered into the grave. A terrible wail of sadness rose up from the brothers and sisters. She put her arms around them and said, "No, I'm not sure.
Yeah, just
Are
go ahead.
you able to pronounce that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Navi Aquina, meu padre God, ish Ashin Akawan, on Kudaka air.
Perfect. That is, let ye not be crying because there is nothing of him down there, only the covering that was on him in this life. It's a lovely thought, a recognition that the body was merely covering and the soul is now freed for the eternal.
We can only see death from one side.
Death is not an experience in one's life.
Talk to a baby in the womb.
Unity with the mother.
Being born would seem like that.
I was at the funeral.
Death is not an experience in one's life.
You cannot actually see the other half of the circle that death opens.
Being born would seem like death.
Body was merely covering.
Great questions.
When the cord was cut, you were going to be, you found you were going to be on your own forever. Whatever that you did.
Does somebody like to read it a second time?
Imagine if you could talk to a baby in the womb and explain its unity with the mother, how this cord of belonging would be life. If you could then tell the baby that this was about to end, it was going to be expelled from the womb, pushed through a very narrow passage, finally to be dropped out into vacant open light. The cord that held it to its mother womb was going to be cut, and it was going to be on its own forevermore. If the baby could talk back, it would fear that it was going to die. For the baby within the womb being born would seem like death. Our difficulty with these great questions is that we are only able to see them from one side. In other words, we can only see death from one side. Many of us have had the experience, but nobody come back to tell us about it. Nobody has come back to tell us about it. Those who have died stay away, they do not return. Therefore, we cannot actually see the other half of the circle that death opens. Wittgenstein summed it up very nicely when he said, "Death is not an experience in one's life. It cannot be an experience because it is the end of the life in which and through which all experience came to you." I like to imagine that death is about rebirth. The soul is now free in a new world where there is no more separation or shadow or tears. A friend of mine lost a son who was 26 years of age. I was at the funeral. Her other children were all there as the coffin was lowered into the grave. A terrible wail of sadness rose up from the brothers and sisters. She put her arms around him and said, Nabi,
I can,
she was,
Nabidi Aquinia, Neotado, Paul, Ishanshin Papawan, and Kuda Parti.
let me not be crying because there's nothing of him down there, only the covering that was on him in this life. It is a lovely thought, a recognition that the body was merely covering and the soul was now freed for the eternal.
Like the no more separation, or shadow, or tears, that connection, separation, shadow, and tears.
I like the soul is now freed for the eternal.
I like to imagine.
Death is about rebirth.
Anybody online, just unmute yourself and speak what you.
Would anyone online like to read it the third time? No question. Anybody else want to do it the third time? I can do it too.
This whole thing reminds me of when I was in Lexington Church Cathedral. A young boy died, well, he was 20, and he had always had a rough time in life. And then after he died, they found out all these wonderful things he had done for people. His parents didn't know it. And so his life was reborn that way.
I'm gonna read it one more time and we can. Imagine if you could talk to a baby in the womb and explain its unity with the mother. How this cord of belonging gives it life. If you could then tell the baby that this was about to end, it was going to be expelled from the womb, pushed through a very narrow passage, finally to be dropped out into vacant open light. The cord that held it to this mother womb was going to be cut, and it was going to be on its own forevermore. If the baby could talk back, it would fear that it was going to die. For the baby within the womb, being born would seem like death. Our difficulty with these great questions is that we are only able to see them from one side. In other words, we can only see death from one side. Many have had the experience, but nobody has come back to tell us about it. Those who have died stayed away. They do not return. Therefore, we cannot actually see the other half of the circle that death opens. Wittgenstein summed it up very nicely when he said, death is not an experience in one's life. It cannot be an experience because it is the end of the life in which and through which all experience came to you. I like to imagine that death is about rebirth. The soul is now free in a new world where there is no more separation or shadow or tears. A friend of mine lost a son who was 26 years of age. I was at the funeral. Her other children were all there as the coffin was lowered into the grave. A terrible wail of sadness rose up from the brothers and sisters. She put her arms around them and said, Nabide Aquina Niltada Go Ish Anshinakawan Ankudak of the air. That is, let me not be crying because there is nothing of him down there, only the covering that was on him in this life. It is a lovely thought, a recognition that the body was merely covering and the soul is now free for the eternal.
I don't always believe those who have died stay away. After the death of my daughter, all of us had very specific things happen that linked to each person and their relationship with her.
There's really, some of them were funny. And some not so funny.
Yeah, that was my like one issue with this passage is plenty of people have had near-death experiences. I don't believe that the dead stay away, so, but you get like the point he's trying to make. He's kind of taking artistic liberties with it.
I think it's interesting that he says many have had an experience, but nobody has come back to tell us about it. I feel like that is more or less what Jesus did, right? He died and was risen, and was like, okay, I've been there. It's there. Follow me, and you'll get there. Right? So I think we've only really had one person come back and tell us about it, and or you have those experiences with loved ones. There's like maybe they're still there, just in soul, not so much in body, right?
I think we also have to remember what Christ said. He said, go out and spread the word, and this is Matthew and Mark. Because if people believe in God, me, the Holy Spirit, and are baptized, they will be with me at the end of the age. But he also says, those who don't are screwed. Right? And so I want to make sure.
Paraphrase.
Just because you die, if you don't know Christ, doesn't mean you still have a wonderful life. It means that there are other things, and people need to hear that. One lady at the table the other day, I was trying to share this with her, and she said, I don't care if I go to hell. And I just wanted to go, okay, you know, because I think we need to be careful and not have people believe that when they die, they're going to heaven, but it does take an act of love of Christ to allow us to go to heaven too. I told her I cared if she was going to hell.
Well, to link it to the first quote, to me, it's like, we go back to deciding. When you decide, you're going towards the light, you're leaving the dark. So I would just like to express that, I guess, linkage of the two passages.
Snoopy links the two passages too. There's this great one-frame cartoon with the back of Charlie Brown and the back of Snoopy, and they're on a grassy little hillside, and they're looking at this fabulous sunrise or sunset. And Charlie says, you know, Snoopy, we only live once. And Snoopy said, you're wrong, Charlie. We only die once. We live every day.
By the word he said was condemned. It wasn't screwed.
Yeah, but before I heard today's sermon, now I'm like linking this passage back to that. It's like to love and follow Jesus, you pay the price of, he said, walking through death into love. And that a lot of that energy is reflected here too.
In my conception, this is just me, okay? So my conception, there's a real debate of accountability, and I mean, as a Lutheran, grace is like the number one thing. So grace is grace. There's no condition. That's not works. It's not what we decide. It's not, because then it's works, justification, and we believe by grace. But I also, I think theologically, cheap grace is something we throw around. It's like, you can do whatever you want, and then you're in, you know? But here's my image, and this is just my image. You die, and then you're enveloped in the love of God. For real. And that love is beyond imagination, and it is so strong that it's, imagine like your grandparent or someone who loves you holding you, that it is so safe. You actually can confront everything you've ever done that has had a negative influence on another, like for real. And because, now, if it happened now, right, without that, if I would die. It would be done. And I'm not a bad guy. I'm not a, but so you can imagine, but it's at that point that you can tell the face the truth, that you can genuinely say, I'm sorry. And then, I mean, for real, that's because the love is so real. You can say, I'm sorry. And then it's, you're in, but I can't believe it's anything we do, because grace is grace. And it's God's faith that saves us, not our faith. And but I mean, and some of us are, it's difficult because there's some people that we probably don't want there with us. Right? And so then it becomes an issue whether we trust God enough to be the one who issues the passports. I mean, that's
very unhappy.
Doesn't matter if we trust God or not, you'll still issue per se.
Pardon me?
Sorry, will it matter if we trust God or not with anything? Because I wouldn't imagine God would stop doing something based off.
No, it doesn't matter what, I don't believe that it matters, but I'm just saying that it's worth questioning ourselves on our human journey. It has nothing to do with our relationship with God. But how much do we, if we believe in grace, how much do we believe in grace? If we say we trust God, then how much do we trust God? It's just, it's an interesting little game. That's where it's about our self-discipline, right? Trying to judge what's the best thing to do.
So this is like,
One of the phrase that sticks out to me is death is about rebirth. And those who have died stay away, they do not return, which you kind of clarified, but I have a sister-in-law who goes, I don't get it, her parents are both gone. She goes, I don't get this death thing. You're here and then you're gone. And obviously she doesn't believe, but she's a really great person. And she does really wonderful things and she's very loving. And I like the word you used, passport. There are people that will be there with us in heaven we wouldn't normally be friends with. However, I do really care that she says, you're here and you're gone. And to me, working and being good lacks the hope of living eternally with our God and Savior.
I have a real personal story about this whole issue, and that's when I was a kid for years. And, so when I became an adult and started wrestling with faith, that was one of the things that I wrestled with. Because I love that person, and when he died, I wanted him to go to heaven. I wanted his eternal life. And it gave me a lot of real comfort. I had a kind of a experience of God's love around that when I was just sitting in the park one day, and I had this vision of him being held in the heart of God, not the arms necessarily, but the heart of God. And the image was, you belong, you're mine, and we all belong. And I think what I what I hear you saying, and what I really feel strongly about too, is that we really can't know. We're so limited, and that's part of being alive. The love of God is so much bigger than anything that we can imagine. It just is, you know. So, yeah.
I wanted to kind of say this, you brought up at the end there. And I think there's a parallel between God and death, that no matter how much the mind wants to know, it's something that has to be experienced, because the mind will just fear or question. And it can't be understood without experience.
Yeah. Thanks, yeah.
I think it's interesting when you read passages like this and you wonder, what does it mean when you hear conquer death? You know, what does that mean? That's something I don't know. What does that mean to conquer death? Because in this situation here, death is portrayed more as a transition. And so three thought.
I just want to comment really quick. I keep thinking about this. We only see death on one side, but I think a lot. Were we dead before we were born? I mean, I'm surprised we don't think about that more. Even if you're like a materialist, you've got to wonder, like, well, if I didn't exist before I was born, then I existed, now I exist. If I go back to not existing, what's to keep me from existing again? There's a lot. To me, there is a high plausibility of like some kind of eternal life, because like if we came from them, I don't know, it's incredibly mysterious to dwell on that and think about that a little bit in this passage.
No.
It's scary to realize, I mean, my heretical side, we don't know. I mean, we really don't know. I think that this is kind of a job smirky when I say this, but I was worried that the people on council that have been with me for the last couple of days, that every time in the sermon I said God, that they were going, he's lying. because one of the topics that we were talking about, it's honestly hard for me to say God, because the moment I say God, I've already limited what I really believe. There was a reason why the Hebrew people could not say the name of God, because you can't. It's not that it's like shame on you, it's that you cannot. You can't. And so that's what Rich, on what you said. It's like we're throwing ourselves off the cliff into something that we don't understand. We can't, and we try, but anything we even try as broad as we can, it's more.
If that is the case.
More and more.
Well, the last sentence in the second paragraph talks about the soul being free. And what is the soul? When was it first?
Read on, Cara.
Well, I know. But when was the concept of the soul first, when did it first come about? And what was it meaning then? And how has it evolved? And I think, well, in the biological world, they don't know it exists. But I think they're beginning to recognize something that's there.
I think it all.
Go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah. You were interrupting me.
She really needs to talk.
No, but going back to what you were saying about whether or not we were unknown before we came here, and then when we go out of here, here is where we go, and it's somewhere in the both sides. But then, as
as human beings began to understand things about what is right, what is wrong, and here is Jesus. And Jesus taught us. And that, to me, is what I really think about of how our faith is, how it comes about, and that we can understand it, and that there is something inside us that is a soul of being able to understand it, of why we're here, what we ought to be doing. So it's amazing what you have told us to think about and do about, and continue our lives as best we can, because we have an example of how it should be done. I'll shut up.
Yeah, no, that's really,
That's a great place to stop me.
yeah, we just have a little prayer called the Eyes of Jesus that Jan's gonna read to close us out.
Thanks, everybody. It's really wonderful, wonderful discussion.
I imagine the eyes of Jesus were harvest brown, the light of their gazing suffused with the seasons, the shadow of winter, the mind of spring, the blues of summer, excuse me, the amber of harvest. A gaze that is perfect sister to the kindness that dwells in his beautiful hands. The eyes of Jesus gaze on us, stirring in the heart's clay the confidence of seasons that never lost their way to harvest. This gaze knows a signature of our heartbeat, the first glimmer from the dawn that dreamed our minds. The crevices where thoughts grow long before the longing in the bones sends them toward the mind's eye. The artistry of the emptiness that knows to slow the hunger of outside things until they weave into the twilight side of the heart. A gaze full of all that is still future, looking out for us to glimpse the jeweled light in winter stone. Quickening the eyes that look at us to see through to where words are blind to say what we would love. Forever falling softly on our faces, his gaze plies the soul with light, laying down a luminous layer behind our brief and brittle days until the appointed dawn comes, assured in harvest death, to unravel the last black knot. And we are back home in the house that we have never left.
Folks, as we break up, I'm hoping somebody might give me a ride home, speaking of home.
Thanks,
Folks, I give you.